always used to lay you clean up the messes. Down on my knees, thought I couldn't stand up on my own. Turns out sometimes you're stronger alone.
Hey, Mike Shimwell here, host of the Shun Podcast. If you want to tell your story, buy a t-shirt, maybe some merch, maybe get some additional resources, you can do so at shunpodcast.com. If you want professional help to heal and recover from life in a cult so that you can figure out who you are and what you want out of this life, or maybe you just want to figure out where the patterns from the past might still be showing up in your life today, you can find help at exjwhelp.com. Again, that's exjwhelp.com. And every episode of the Shun Podcast has helpful links in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. So if you need something, you can always look there. And now, let's meet our guest.
My name is Caressa. I'm 31 years old, and I used to be a Jehovah's Witness, and I'm shunned.
All right, Caressa. So how did you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
I was born into it. My mom and dad are both, well, my mom is no longer alive. My dad kind of still witness, but yeah, born in.
Okay. Do you know how many generations it goes back or where it started?
So my mom and her sister, when they were younger, were looking for a religion. And my mom was looking for multiple different kinds, whatever worked for her personality, like one would do. And she tried out one, and something about like her dress wasn't appropriate, so she didn't want to be a part of that religion, went to like Mormons or something, and she was like, I like caffeine. And then somebody showed her Jehovah's name in the Bible, and she just so happened to be able to wear what she normally wears and drink coffee, and was like, this is the true religion. This is the one. So that's what she did, and she pulled absolutely everyone else in. So
Wow.
my grandma, my grandpa, her sister, her brother, both of their spouses, my dad, and like friends around.
Wow. So once she got into it, she was super zealous, as they would say. She was really into it and told everybody.
Very much.
Wow. Sounds like she must have had a, I don't know, outgoing personality or was kind of intense in certain ways to be able to share it with everybody. She certainly wasn't just learning this and sitting on it and being quiet.
No. Her mentality was very my way or the highway. She told my uncle when he was dating his wife, she's like, I love her. She's fantastic. But if she doesn't become a witness, you need to break up. So everybody just converted. Same with my dad. He was not even supposed to be in this country. He was supposed to be, he had just gotten back from Liberia for a little bit before they started dating. And he was supposed to be going to Saudi Arabia and moving there. And my mom's like, no, we're staying here. We're doing this. So my grandma also did not like my mom for these reasons. But my dad's side of the family never dealt with any of that, never came into the truth.
Oh, okay. So your mom definitely had influence over her side of the family, but not so much your dad's.
Yeah, very much.
Okay. So your dad was traveling a lot. Can I ask what that might have been about?
My grandpa was in the oil field, so like they moved a lot. So like he spent the majority of his childhood growing up in Liberia. He moved back from Liberia. They went to Saudi for a little bit. There was a little bit of a time, well, they kind of just traveled the world for a long time. My dad had a coin collection, a little box of coins that he had acquired when he was little that I loved. Oh my gosh, I loved. And it's coins and different currencies that like aren't even made anymore, currencies with like X different people on them and all this cool stuff, but from all over the world. I loved it. So he would travel a lot. But once he was back, but he was going to go back to Saudi, and ended up staying and marrying my mom. So after they got married, there was no more traveling. It was just Jehovah's Witness life. They had my brother and sister, who they're 2 years apart, and I came by 10 years after my brother, 8 years after my sister. So I was just the happy accident.
Ah, so you're the baby of the family.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So then growing up in this, obviously it sounds like becoming Jehovah's Witnesses changed your dad's life a lot, and he had to stay put instead of traveling the world and doing all of these things a lot more. So it obviously had an impact there. What about you when you're growing up in this? What was the worldview that it gave you? How did it make you see the world as a little JW kid?
Um, Strangely. So, like, my family dynamic is like a lot of Jehovah's Witness families, apparently. Um, I knew that my parents were messed up, right? But in my brain, I was still like, the religion is good. The people are good. Like, this is just my family that's messed up. And sure, these families too, but they're friends with my family. So that makes sense. You know, I was like, not everybody is like this. So in my brain, even now, honestly, I just try to see the good in people and see humanity in people and just like I want so badly to just believe that people are good. So, like, in my brain, and I thought we were doing good things. So, like, I was always with my grandparents. My grandparents were full time pioneers. They lived next door to me. My mom hated me. So, I was just not there most of the time. As much of the time as I could be away, I was away. So, I would just go out in service with my grandparents all the time. And like, I loved that. I loved that. My grandpa was my hero. My grandma was such a sweet lady. And we would just always be out. She'd be so happy. She was very convinced she was doing something really good. And so I was like, this is good. And then as I got older, my sister was a pioneer. I went out with her all the time. I feel like crucial things. Uh, my mom was a full time pioneer for a long time when my brother and my sister were little. And then when I was born, she stopped functioning as a person, just completely stopped. She didn't get out of bed for 3 years. So I just was pretty much raised by my siblings. And now that I'm a mom, I was always told that like I was such a bad kid. And they're like, you were so bad and you cried all the time and you were such a brat and all this stuff. And like now that I have my own kid, I'm like, well, no wonder, literally just left me. Like kids need stuff. Like there was an old family video of like my sister and like kids, you're playing, right? But like she was throwing my pacifier down the hallway and I'd like crawl after it and like, but that was the only interaction I was getting. So,
It's like throwing a ball to a dog. You throw your pacifier.
My own toddler comes to me and it's like, Mom, play fetch. So, I mean, maybe it's a kid thing, but like,
Understood. But it's so your mom ends up, was it like was your mom suffering from something like a postpartum depression, or was your mom just realizing that she couldn't pioneer anymore and she kind of shut down around that?
my mom was a horrible person. She was a horrible person. The last words I said to my mom, I probably can't repeat here.
Okay. All right.
Like, and I knew in advance that she was dying. And my dad's like, she's gonna die. You want to come see her and say something? And I was like, no, the last thing I said to her is what I'm good with. Like, I think enough said, we're good.
A lot of us can understand that. A lot of us had rather narcissistic parents, and I understand. Like you said, your mom hated you earlier, and yeah, it sounds like there was even some abandonment there, neglect at a minimum. So I get it.
Yeah. No, she was a piece of work. So when I was little, my sister was my mom. She even to this day, she still kind of is, which has a weird dynamic of sister mom thing. So like we have our ups and downs, but she's always been there for me. So like it was just me and my sister and my brother. My dad worked all the time, and my mom didn't leave her bed. Like she just didn't function. She didn't have a real excuse, but she told me years and years and years later that she had postpartum depression with all three of us.
Mm.
But also like get help, do something about it. Don't just take
Well, you're
that
just
out
supposed
on
to
me.
pray about it and attend the meetings and study the Watchtower, and it magically cures, right?
Yeah, which she was not doing. She stopped doing all of that for most of my life. She didn't do anything with the religion, but she was like, "Oh, I'm such a wonderful Jehovah's Witness. I'm such an example." So it was left to us to be that for her because she wasn't pioneering. So that meant my sister had to, and I had to go with her. So, and like my brother, he was trying to live his own life, still in and out. That was a whole thing, but he was kind of like my buddy, like my grounding person. And he left, well, he got kicked out at 17, and then he came back, and then he moved out at 19. And so it was just me and my sister for a long time. And yeah. It
And your
was
sister's not supposed to be your mom, so that's a tough
definitely.
situation. That does blur lines, and kind of speaks to maybe where your mom was, that your mom couldn't be your mom. Um, and so you were starting to talk a minute ago about like field service and such and how you enjoyed that. So let's talk just a little bit about the Kingdom Hall. We'll get to, maybe with some more family dynamics and such in a minute, but at the Kingdom Hall, were you like, did you enjoy some of the stuff? Did you enjoy some of the meetings or field service? Did you feel like you had friends or fit in? What was there for you or what was not there for you?
So we moved Kingdom Halls 3 different times. When I was very small, we went to one congregation that had all of my cousins, all of my friends, and we were great. Like I grew up in that hall, loved it. And my mom got into a falling out with her brother, and he was the elder there. So we switched congregations, and it took us years. And that's where my sister was pioneering, was at this different congregation. Took us years, but like I finally got some friends. It was never the same, but I did okay there. And then by the time I want to say around 9, we moved to my final congregation that I was at, and it was a lot. I was in a very different age group. There was a lot of kids, but they were all older. There was one kid who, he was my best friend. He was my absolute best friend. I loved him. And I had just turned 13. He was still 12. He got sick, and within 2 weeks he had died because he had leukemia. Yeah, it was hard. So I had shut down pretty hard after that, and like his brother and sister were older, and like his sister was the popular girl who was friends with like everybody. So she had everyone there, right? And I'm like, I just lost my best friend. I feel like I'm dying right now. And I remember not talking, not saying anything. And my mom's like, you have to go over there. Kelsey or his sister needs you. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So I had to. So the night that he passed away, I spent that night in his room with his sister because all of her friends just did not show up. They weren't around. So I actually stayed an entire week at their house, just helping their family and helping his sister grieve the loss of him. It was really hard.
You had to be there for
I
his
slept
last
when
moments?
I didn't see him pass. So he got sick, and they're like, he's sick. And I was like, okay, no big deal. And then they're like, he has cancer. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, he's dead. And the day, so I wasn't there when he passed, but the day that he passed, like my parents took me to his house, and I stayed with his sister and his family for a whole week. I slept in his room on the floor because his sister wanted to sleep in his bed. Like,
That is rough. There's not only no help for you,
yeah,
but you are just being forced to be the help for someone else. And where were the adults in all of this? Why
the
weren't there
adults,
adults helping? Why is it here? You're a kid. Go over
yeah.
there and insert yourself into this situation that hurts you too. That's terrible.
My mom has always viewed all of her children as an extension of her in a way of
Yeah, that's what
I had
narcissists
you to
do.
make me look good,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to do that. But I feel like somebody should, so it's going to be you.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's what I did. And then like after a week, his sister's friends finally showed up again, and then all of that I was there for her. And like I heard from other people that like it meant a lot to her, but like I wouldn't have known that. She kicked me back to the curb. I was the weird girl. And I was like, sorry, man. I'm so glad I was there for you during the worst day of your life, but okay.
And one of the worst days of yours as well.
It was bad. It was real bad. And
Wow.
yeah,
That's terrible. I'm sorry that because you were failed by the adults there too. Where's the trauma counseling or the grief counseling for someone who's losing someone like that? Instead, it's just, go over there, focus on helping that person so I look good and my family looks good.
yeah. The worst thing for me is 3 years later. So the day that he passed, it was June 10th, and it was still to this day. It has just always been like the worst day for me. And 3 years later to the day, I was watching my grandpa pass in his house to the day.
Wow.
So like I also was there when he died and I saw him die. But also my mom didn't do anything or get out of bed for I was probably like 16 at this point. Um so like imagine a person that doesn't get out of bed, they get pretty large. They don't walk, they don't do a lot. So I remember him passing and me having to go next door, pick her up and drive her next door so she could be there when he passed.
Well, and that was her dad?
Yeah, well, it's her stepdad, but basically her dad. Been her dad since two.
Sure, fair enough. So the father she knew.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
wow, that's and again, that's you as a kid having to almost act like an adult. And
Yeah,
that's something that happens a lot in these situations with Jehovah's Witnesses is they seem to think that children are adults. There's no allowance for you to just be a child or to need anything from them. You're more likely to be asked to give something to them, to
yeah.
the
Or you're so mature for your age. You're not like other girls. My mom forced that. She wouldn't let me and my sister like joyously laugh at stuff because she didn't want us to be those dumb giggly girls. And I was like, okay, cool, cool. Um,
Well, you were too happy. My dad was the one who would, if we were all sitting watching something and we as kids made too much noise or were laughing, if there
mhm.
was joy in the room, he would change the channel. Because if he can't have any happiness in his life, neither should anyone else, right? And I think that there's a lot of that. There's just a lot of projection of I'm not happy, and therefore I really don't. I can't tolerate your happiness.
That was very much the motto of our house is like if my mom isn't happy, no one is happy except for there was nothing you could do to make that woman happy.
Well, there you
Like
go.
nothing.
So in other
Yeah.
words, just like with the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses, a lot of the common refrain is often, no matter what I did, I could never be good enough. I could never be enough. It sounds like in your family as well, you felt that way.
Took me years to realize that I was never the problem. I tried and tried and tried to do everything I can. I was like, if I could just do more, if I could just be better, then they would love me. And I was never the problem. It was
No,
never me.
no, it wasn't. So did you attach it all to, we talked about some situations, did you attach it all to the belief system growing up? Did you attach and like, did you want to share the truth as you saw it with others? That were you into it at all?
Yes and no. I was kind of a troublemaker because I had questions. And when I read things and they don't make sense to me, I have questions. And then I'm like, hey, hi, hello. Isn't this whole thing like God doesn't lie? God doesn't ever, he's infallible. He wouldn't tell a lie. But then literally in Genesis, boom, lies. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this whole book is based on lies. Like, one, you're telling him he's gonna eat from this fruit and he's gonna die. Guess who lived, buddy? I was like, then you're gonna exile him to the garden or from the garden. I was like, but they went to a city where there was people, but they were the only people. If not, how many separate times has like incest of all of humanity happened? Like, I have issues. I have a lot of questions. That was very frowned upon. And then that's not even all. I had so many questions. So my mom did not like it. And I either had to find my own answers in like, what was that book? The Revelation book or something? The little brown one. You remember that?
What are you talking about? The reasoning book.
The reasoning book. That's
Reasoning
what it
from the
was.
scriptures.
So I had to find the answers in there, which were always the dumbest things. It's like the person will say this, you say this, and they'll say, "Oh my goodness, I'm converting right now." But like
It's the little book of propaganda.
Yeah, so much propaganda. It never answered anything. So much propaganda. My mom used to always tell me, she's like, Jehovah's Witnesses are the only religion that uses the Bible when like they preach, like we're the only ones. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Because we have like 9 million books that we use every single meeting. Well, how weird is that? When I got out, like the first place that I had gone, I ended up going to a church with like the people I was staying with. And I was like, oh, the only thing they use is the Bible. There's no like leaflets or pamphlets or books or like separate anything. It's just the Bible. That's cool.
I mean, they
Like,
didn't have but how could you study the Bible without the use of Bible study aids like the Watchtower and Awake magazine?
Without somebody telling you exactly what you're supposed to think, and this is what this means.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you can just pick any scripture anywhere you want and apply it to any situation. Context means nothing. You don't even need it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a rather ambiguous book, so you can read in whatever you want, really, and make it fit. I can take one scripture and make it fit 10 different ways, probably, to a situation, both for and against, right? And so but Jehovah's Witnesses have a narrative, and it's in those books, and therefore they need you to study the books with the Bible.
Yeah. And I was like, even when so I left before they got the little app thing that they have now. I still had like the discs that you would put into the computer to get the Watchtower library. And like, even that, I'm like, why can't we just look up on the internet this information? If it's true and infallible and blends with that, it explains the universe. Like, shouldn't we be able to look up other things? And it's like, no. I also remember a friend asking me when we were young, like, why don't you believe in the Trinity? And I'm like, there's a reason, probably. I don't know.
There's a reason. Let me get out the reasoning book and tell you why.
Yeah. Like, this is supposed to be your answer right here. You're supposed to
let me get out my brain and show you.
Yeah.
So you had questions. Obviously, that is going to put you in the troublemaker category. Were you very active in the Kingdom Hall? Did you give talks? Did you comment at the meetings and such? Were those things expected of you? Or did you just kind of get by?
So I was in field service every single day from like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. from the time I was a child. Like a little kid, every single day. So always out in service. We would get rides to go out in service. We would get rides to go to the meeting. My dad would work all the time. My mom did not get out of bed, so she didn't go. We were expected to go because we had to look like a good witness family. So I would go to every meeting. We'd hitch different rides. I didn't know how to study because nobody ever showed me in our family studies where we would sit around the table and my dad would yell at all of us while we held a book. And then at some point, someone would cry and like someone would get pissed off and walk away. So I wasn't good at studying. I didn't even know what I was supposed to do. I remember my mom telling me like, you need to study for the meeting. And I was like, I don't know how. And she just like threw the books at me and like slammed the door. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to throw the Bible, but all right. So like I kind of studied. It wasn't until I got older. I had a friend that I got close to when I decided to throw myself into it, and she started pioneering. She was studying. We were both like, this was like early 2000s, so we were both like emo kids in the Jehovah's Witness thing, not really knowing what to do, just like alternative homeschooled witness kids. If that makes sense.
Homeschooled. I was going to ask you. So, if
Oh
you're
yeah.
going out in service from sun up to
Oh yeah.
sundown, so to speak, how in the world are you going to school
To
or doing
school,
anything
yeah.
else?
I begged my parents to take me to school. I was like, please just let me go. Please just let me go. And they're like, you're gonna get beat up and made fun of every day. And like if you go and you get beat up and you want out, like we're not taking you out and you're just gonna have to stay there. And like, what else? Oh, they're like, you're too far behind, you'll never be in the same grade and blah blah blah. Except for like my mom's schooling was, here's the book, read the directions. And I'm like, cool, it says divide this. I don't know what that means. Like, how do you divide? And she's like, just read the directions. So most of my life, I've just taken education into my own hands and like, I'm going to figure out as much of this thing as I possibly can. But they were also very much like, the only education you need is Jehovah. So
If you read if you read the Awake magazine, it's like getting a 4-year university education, they would say, which is hilarious. They're the most dumbed down magazines.
so dumb. And like I think about it too, is like people would be like, oh my gosh, there's these kids, they have such a high vocabulary, they're so smart, look at them reading. And I was like, we were reading these big words and all this stuff, and we had no idea. Like I had no idea what any of that stuff even meant. Just because I could read it didn't mean I was comprehending anything. Just like, this is what it says, be impressed.
So it sounds like then you were denied a basic education,
Oh,
or at least
very
had to do it on your own.
very much. It was very up to me to do anything. And like even high school, so like they stopped getting me like even just like the little school books. Like I think 7th grade was the last that they got me, and they were just like, I'm done with it. You probably won't be alive by the end of this anyways, like Armageddon. I was like, okay. So when high school came around and all my friends were like into high school, I like begged and begged to get like an actual high school program for the computer. And I was like, oh my gosh, finally. But
So they
anything
did get
prior,
you something for high school?
yeah, I got like a little program for like a high school program, and I was like, oh my goodness. But like even my brother, so all of us were homeschooled. My brother, they got him a high school program, and then they stopped paying for it. So like he didn't get the last of his books. Same thing with my sister. Same thing with me. So like none of us graduated anything. None of us got to finish anything because they're like, yeah, we paid for some of it. We're not paying. We already did that once. You should be educated. They were the worst. They were literally the worst. This is why I was like, I need to tell somebody about my family that knows what Jehovah's Witness families are like.
Yeah. There's a lot of neglect there, isn't there? And
So much neglect.
because all that matters is their faith. They don't care about this world. They don't think that it matters or that it will be here. So why in the world would they teach you any kind of skills or give you any kind of opportunities to make anything of your life? They just want you to go out in field service, knock on doors, go out, go to the meetings and be a good little JW. They don't care about the rest of your life at all.
Yeah, exactly. It was very much just look good, make our family look good, don't raise eyebrows, don't draw attention, and if you do, make it good attention that makes us look good. And the only skill you need is like trades work, so like carpentry. And my dad did glass for quick builds and like literally started doing construction at like 8 years old and working in that. I mean, I did that for years and years, so like that was my trade. but
What
still,
was your
like,
trade? The glass?
no, carpentry.
Would you like to see opportunities for people that have been victims of financial control? Really like all of us that left a cult that have been discouraged from education, ambition, and financial literacy? Would you like to see those individuals have resources available to get help? Wouldn't it be nice to see job opportunities available for ex Jehovah's Witnesses who have been isolated from even knowing what those opportunities might be? Do you have a small business, but maybe you don't know how to market it or put it in front of the right people? Or maybe you have a hard time selling what you have or what you do because you've been told your whole life that you're not good enough. Are you struggling because you have no network to work within and so your opportunities are very limited? What if you had access to help you to actually manage the money you made so that you kept more of it and maybe had some chance at actually retiring with dignity someday? If these things sound good to you, I'm looking for people that are looking for such opportunities. I'm looking for people in the community that are recruiters, marketing professionals, employers, and those who want to be helped in these areas. And if you're not in the community and you listen to this and you're like, "Hey, I have a business and I think I could help in some way," feel free to reach out. Please go to exjwhelp.com, again, exjwhelp.com, or I'm calling this the Uprising Project. So you can also go to theuprisingproject.com for more information and to apply to be included in some exciting new opportunities that I'm working very hard to bring into the community. Together, we can all rise up. Oh, carpentry. Okay,
My
so
sister still does carpentry. Like, that's still her. She has her own business, and I worked in that for a long time. But it gets to be a lot, especially when you're tiny.
well, and it also just limits your options, right? You're as a one of Jehovah's Witnesses, you're only exposed to certain types of occupations. So uh, most Jehovah's Witnesses use their bodies physically to make a living, doing some sort of labor type of work. And while that's great, and there's nothing wrong with that, uh, labor, there is a point of diminishing returns physically. I know I
Mhm.
experienced that myself. My back had a lot of issues. And so, yeah, definitely there's only one path there too, right? And so you're just limited in your options. You have no network. You don't know anybody who does anything different. So why would you not end up doing something like that? Which again, nothing wrong with carpentry or any of that work. But if it's the only thing you're ever given access to, that's a shame because like you kids were homeschooled. Maybe one of you would have been a great doctor, lawyer, psychologist, scientist. Maybe you had other biologists, you had other things that you wanted to do and you were never given an option to even try, and that's a shame. So then, getting back to your life as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, I was going to ask you, maybe where you got baptized in any of this. There's so much going on, but I just wanted first to make sure, was there anything from your childhood that we kind of overlooked, or anything that you wanted to make sure we talked about?
So yeah, definitely overlook one thing.
Mhm.
When I was a kid, my sister started dating a guy from another congregation. An elder that we've known our whole lives told my mom that he didn't like that guy, that he was bad news, and that she shouldn't be with him, but didn't give them any more reason than that. Just that's all. And that he was reproved or something. And she was 18 when they started dating. They were dating for, several years. I was 8, almost 9, and he was 36, 37, roughly around there. Yeah, too old for my sister. And
Yeah, that's what's
he
kind of jumping out at me. You got 36, 37. She's 18, 19, whatever, and you're 8, 9.
Yeah.
Wow, those are some age gaps.
Even my mom was like, "What are you doing with my daughter? Like, that's weird, right?" So red flags already there, except for he wasn't so much interested in that creepy dynamic, but sexually abused me for years. like years. So until I was 12, that was going on.
So sorry. So did he get caught or?
It's kind of random. So I didn't really have words for what was going on. I tried in my own way to, put myself away from that, but also like my family dynamic was so awful and so toxic, and everybody was so miserable all the time. And he made my sister really happy, and I saw that she was happy and she was engaged and going to be married. And I was like, oh my God, she has a way out. I'm not gonna ruin her happiness when she has an escape. So I just kind of tried my best to stay away and do what I could. But like I was in that house and I was always the chaperone that had to be there with them. So every time I tried and begged and pleaded to not go with them, I would get in trouble. I remember my dad slapping me in the face because I didn't want to say hi to him. And he told me I was being rude. So like that went on for a long time, and everybody's like, oh, she's just upset because she's losing her sister and that's why she's acting like this. And I was like, that is not why. I hope my sister gets out. Like that is not why. So that went on. But I had written in my diary, I remember writing like the entry and just like, I'm pretty sure these are the correct words. And I just wrote these words along with all of my other entries of just like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like somebody save me from like this life. And my mom obviously always goes through my stuff, Jehovah's Witness check. So she read my diary and she saw that. And I remember the night that her and my dad wanted to talk to me. I thought they were good. They seemed upset. I thought they were upset at me because I wasn't on like the publisher's list to like give talks. And I was like, I'm going to do it. I swear I'm going to do it on Tuesday. Like I'm already like ready to sign up. And they're like, is this what's happening? And I was like, oh my God, finally. Yes. Like this is what's happening. And immediately because my parents vary in the religion, like called the brothers instead of like, the police. Seems like a logical solution. So they called the elders. So I had to tell these grown men, one of which was the father of my best friend that passed from cancer.
Oh, wow.
So telling them all of these things that had been happening to me and getting question of, well, why didn't you say something and blah, blah, blah. So like I told them what happened. Thankfully, my friend's dad viewed me as one of his own and was like, you need to call the police. Like this is something that needs to be reported. Mm-hmm. So, and like, I was so young and dumb when the cops showed up. I was like, I already told everybody. And they're like, what do you mean you told everybody? I was like, I already said all this stuff. I already told the brothers. Like, what do you mean y'all aren't in connection? Why did I tell them if they didn't? What's going on? So I had to relay it twice. And then I remember the elders having a meeting with the guy that did this and flat out saying that they didn't believe me, that I was lying, that it was an excuse to ruin his reputation, and they didn't do anything. Now, mind you, he was charged. He should have been sentenced longer, but I could not bring myself to go to court. I went to like the kids in court thing, which if anybody's ever dealt with that, it's literally to like calm children and put them more at ease for when they have to go and testify against these horrible things that have happened. And I just couldn't do it. I could not do it. So my parents went for me. He only got 6 months. That's it. 10 years probation. Had to sign that he was guilty. So all of that. And the brothers still left him in good standings. Not only that, he was in a hall with multiple children, and he was like this with a family that had twin little girls and a little boy my age. And my friend went to that hall. His dad was an elder in that hall. His dad actually has recently left, and he said that my story has haunted him this whole time and was the main reason he got out of the religion. So he was in that hall, and he told that sister there that like, hey, I know the person this happened to. Like, do not let your kids around him. And she was so pissed off and was like, don't even talk to me again. So like they just stay. I think about them all the time. So it wasn't until 10 years, I was already out of the religion. 10 years later, that he was married to a woman who had a little girl, and he told his brother-in-law what happened. And finally, there was 2 witnesses. And so he said, all right. And then I remember people calling me like this was good news. They're like, oh my gosh, he got disfellowshipped. And I was like, it's been 10 years. 10 years. He legally should not have been allowed to be at the Kingdom Hall. And everybody knew. And not only that, because we had to be the example, I had to go do all the assemblies and everything. He was in our district. So every assembly that I would go to, I would see him. And I just remember having like panic attacks and just trying my best to not go. And I remember it had been a while since I had been. And my mom convinced me to go to the assembly. And I was like, I'll do it. My grandma had Alzheimer's. She wasn't doing well. I loved her so much. So I was like, I'll just go. She's going to be there. I'm going to go with her. And I remember going and getting like a dress and all this stuff because like pretty worldly. Like I don't have any of this stuff. Got it. I went to the assembly. And I remember seeing him having like a full panic attack. And then like just trying to get to my grandma and like walking to her, and this old lady stops me and she's like, sister. And I was like, oh, hi, like, what is it? She's like, I just wanted to tell you, you are dressed so inappropriately. You shouldn't even be here. And I was like, I don't want to be here. So cool. I'm glad we're doing this. And I remember telling my mom, I was like, I'm not going back. Like, I'm not going back. I'm sorry. I don't care. And she's like, you have to. For Jehovah, you have to be strong. And I was like, no, if your God is all loving and all knowing, then he knows that every time I step into that assembly hall, I have a panic attack and am filled with anxiety to the point that I want to throw up like the whole time. I was like, a loving God isn't going to put me through that. A loving God isn't going to force me to sit through that. I was like, and if he knows my heart, he knows that I'm not a terrible person. If he chooses to kill me anyways because I wasn't sitting in this room on this day, then he's not a God I want anything to do with. So, yeah. And that's just kind of how it went. Just
it's
didn't do.
absolutely sickening because you said that there was some elder, I think, that had told you all that he didn't like this guy. And tried to warn you to some degree, which tells me that somebody knew something already. So why wouldn't you have been the quote second witness? So stupid. You shouldn't be handling any of this. And then it's like the tone deaf nature of Jehovah's Witnesses and how they see things. So now, 10 years later, well, that brother gets disfellowshipped or whatever because he's hurt somebody else, and everybody's like, aren't you happy? Oh yeah, I'm fucking thrilled that another kid was abused.
It wasn't necessarily another kid. He told his brother-in-law what he did to me. So it was like, oh, 10 years later, you were telling the truth. Your story was validated. How about that? And I'm like, yeah, I know. Not only that, okay, this is kind of sidetrack. I also remember, but also speaks to like my family as a whole. I remember sneaking out at like 15 and getting caught, I'm pretty sure it was when I stuck out, getting caught, my dad being super pissed off, and like sitting me down at the table. And I remember him telling me like, how dare you? You probably lied about everything. Did you lie about what happened and you just ruined that poor man's life? Mind you, I still talk to my dad. I'm a good person. Yeah, no, it was bad. It was really bad. That's how bad my mom was. Because like, done with you, dead to me. My dad, I still give chances to. And like, that is what he told me. Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously that's your decision and you have to decide how healthy that is for you. But when I guess I had been wondering what your dad's role was in some of this. And when you said earlier that you hadn't mentioned him a whole lot other than that he had been out and working and such. And you said earlier that he slapped you in the face for not saying a greeting to this guy. I instantly knew, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
My dad was work, drink. Oh, both of my parents also extreme alcoholics, just extreme. And that we all drank as kids too. They didn't give a shit. I started drinking when I was like 12 to cope with what I was dealing with. I'm pretty sure they knew, they didn't care. But like my dad work all the time, come home to drink, and make my mom happy, which was a very difficult task. And she would spend all day long looking for something to get pissed off over, and he would never talk to you. He would never give you reasons or even let you know. She would just be like, they did this. Most of the time we didn't do that. Like when my brother was 17, she was giving him shit because he was supposed to go to a party that they agreed for him to go to, and she's like, you're not going. Oh no, I'm sorry, it was a wedding. It was a wedding. He had already bought his suit and everything because he was in the wedding. And she's like, you're not going. He's like, okay, well, we'll see what dad says, because he already said that I could go. And she told my dad that my brother hit her. And so my dad just stormed in and just started attacking my brother. He broke multiple ribs. He threw him through the outside of our house. Like his head was outside of our house. His body was inside of our house. We were building an addition, and he just like put him through the wall, and they kicked him out. No discussion, no anything. He had no idea what was going on. In a blind fury, he was like, my dad was like, you hit your mom. There was never any discussion of anything. It was just, if she gave him the words, you were going to get violence. You were going to get a lot. And I make kind of excuses for my dad just because I know how manipulative and terrible my mom was. But also
yeah, he's a grown
he's
man.
at least trying. He's at least trying now as an adult. Since she's died, he's become a much better person. But like, she never tried. She never tried. She was just always terrible. So yeah, even when she died, like I had a mourning process, but not for her, for like the mother I never had.
Oh,
So,
yes. I went through that with my dad to some degree. I understand. That's yeah, so basically your house was a free for all for abuse from your parents, it sounds like. It
so
doesn't
much
sound
so.
like a lot of
It got worse. It was a little bit easier when like my siblings were there. It got worse in a different way. So like when I talk to them even now about these things, like they still don't understand what I went through, because they were always together. Like there was always somebody else to deflect to. And when it was all three of us, and then it was just me and my sister, and then she left and it was just me. Like there was no other deflection. Everything was at me.
So we know
So
who the whipping post is gonna be.
yeah, exactly. They got less like physically abusive, but just so many different ways of coming up with new punishment. The joke in my hall with my friend and her mom was, they always called me Cinderissa, because every time they called me I was cleaning. They're like, you're always cleaning. I was like, yeah, it's because my parents make disgusting mess and our house is huge and I have to clean it every day all the time. Like, I don't want to be doing this, but this is literally my job in life. Yeah, it was just a lot all the time. And then expected to be a full caregiver of my mom, who when she passed, she was easily 500-600 pounds easily. So like, she didn't get up, she didn't walk, she didn't do anything. Like she just sat there and was horrible all the time. Yeah.
What a miserable, sad existence. And it sounds like it bled on to everyone else. How did you have any friends in all of this? Did you, growing up as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, did you ever find, obviously you couldn't find them at school because you weren't allowed to go. So you're really isolated there. I guess, did you find friends at the Kingdom Hall, or maybe somebody, was there any escape for you?
Ish. My grandparents were a huge escape, and I would literally, from the time I woke up until my mom called me at night to come home, I would be at their house or out in service or just with them. They would go to the lake. I would just go with them. They would try and sneak off for their own vacations without me, and I would like see them and I'm like, I'll pack a bag. Don't leave without me. And they're like, okay. So it's always with them. And then with my cousin, she was worldly, okay, but she's been my best friend since birth. She was always there, and I would stay, weeks at their house because my mom didn't want me there. She just didn't want me around. So I would spend weeks at, my cousin's house, and that would be good for a little bit until either they would say something to my mom of like, what are you doing? Or give her any critique at all, or she would get pissed off at me, and then you don't get to see them. So there was like 3 solid years that I didn't get to see my cousin at all. Like at all. Couldn't talk to her, couldn't see her because she's worldly and blah, blah, blah. I think they said something to her about her drinking or something. So I couldn't see her. And then like in the congregation that I was in after, my friend with cancer had passed, another girl moved in who was a year older than me. And we were our 2 little alternative girls together. Also terrible parents. And we bonded. We got really close. She is the reason I kind of like dove into everything. She decided to kind of take a turn ish. She was also kind of doing her own thing, but she wanted to, get baptized and start pioneering. And she would drive all the way out to my house and pick me up for service. So I would be with her. And going out in service with her and doing auxiliary pioneering and things like that. Before I got baptized, just being out a lot. So she got baptized, and then I was like, oh my gosh, you got a party? I'm going to get baptized. So I got baptized so I could have a party.
Because it's the only way you get praise.
Only way. It's the only way. It was the only time, like, until I left that I was ever celebrated for anything. Like anything.
Yeah, it's like I don't know, maybe a bad example, but I'm just thinking like the bar mitzvah or quinceañera or something where it's like but for you this is it.
Yeah.
This is your one chance to have joy. There's this thing that you can do and you get to choose when to do it. It's not at a certain age, and you can do this thing, and now everybody might be excited about you at least for a moment in your miserable life.
Yep. Yeah, and like
how old were you?
I was 15. I think I was 15 when I got baptized. Solely just because my friend was doing it, and why not? She did it. She's pioneering. People are like talking nice about her. She's getting, a little bit of praise, whereas I've just been straggling and hitching rides to the meeting, and when I'm home, I basically just stop existing to everyone. So yeah, I was like, let's do it. So at 15, I got baptized. Right after I got baptized, I went with my aunt and uncle. They live like on a beach, like a nice beach down south, like 5 hours from here. And I went with them, and they were all pioneering, like both of my cousins, my aunt, my uncle. My uncle was an elder. I don't know if my uncle was pioneering, but the other 3 full-time pioneers. And I stayed like 10 days, I think, at their house, just pioneering and doing stuff with them and just really having a good grasp on it. Every time I stayed with them, it was really nice. I loved hanging out with those 2 cousins specifically. Like, we connected well. And then I remember coming back home, and when I came back home, when I left, our congregation had like the largest group of like underaged or younger pioneers like in this whole area. Like, we had 15 or 20 plus people that were 22 and under pioneering. When I came back, everybody was in trouble. Everybody was in trouble. There was a lot of stuff that had been going on and made me like, like my pioneer friend was doing some shady stuff. And I was like, okay, this is weird. And I remember the elders pulling me in for a meeting, and they're like, we're going to reprove you. We're going to do this. And I was like, for what? What did do? And they're like, we know you were at this party and we know that you were sleeping with this person and doing this. And I was like, I wasn't even in this town. Like, what are you talking about? I literally had to pull out dates on my phone and like, I got baptized this day, I left this day, I came back this day. Like, what are you talking about? And they were trying to get me to like say something about any of the other people. And they're like, we know that you know. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
So kind of guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah, and I was like, this is BS. And my dad was pretty pissed. And then when we walked in, he was like, oh, wow, no, they're just pulling a bunch of nonsense. I was like, yeah, I wasn't even here. Like, I don't know what's going on. But at that point, it was already kind of like my breaking point. Like, I had done it for a little bit. Like, I had just started really getting into the pioneering. And then, like, my grandpa died. And when my friend's grandpa died, he was disfellowshipped, had been disfellowshipped for like 25 years or something. The whole congregation like flooded around her, and she didn't even talk to him, right? Didn't even talk to him, right? It's still good. Like, that's still her grandpa. But I felt a little hurt. So like everybody just flooded to her. And I was like, oh my gosh, like such compassion, including me, such compassion. You know, if my grandpa had passed, I would feel the same. Well, then he did. And he was like my absolute hero in life. I was with him all the time, my favorite person, and had been faithful for my whole life, longer than my whole life, making the same for himself and doing all this stuff. And when he passed, like, I just couldn't deal with anything. And I remember like nobody really reached out. Maybe my friend reached out and was like, I hope you're okay. And I was like, okay, cool. But nobody else did. And I was just depressed. And I was like, I'm not finding a ride to go to the meeting. Like, I don't want to do this. I'm not finding a ride to go out in service. Like, I don't want to do this. So I just stopped for like a solid month. Just my world had shattered. So it took me a minute just to like breathe again.
There
And
was no rallying around your family or in your loss.
a
Were you
month
just
later,
in the wrong family? In other words, were
I
you
mean,
all not in the cool club, so to speak?
about my family, they're pretty terrible. um, No, it had been about a month, and I went back to the first meeting I had been to since then. Mind you, I was pioneering before this. Like, everybody was like, yeah, this is one of our people. It had been a month, and I walked in, and the first thing that one of my people says to me is, oh, hey, stranger, haven't seen you. There's the bathroom in case you forgot where it is. And I'm like, I hate it here. I can't do this. And I was like, I'm not gonna do this again. I still kind of like struggled and straggled. In between that time, my mom found another trauma friend for me. She is still one of my best friends to this day. I love this girl.
You mean
She
someone for you to trauma bond with, or what?
somebody who was going through a horrific thing, who she was like, somebody should be there for me, for them, not going to be me, send my daughter.
Oh, yeah,
So
here you go help somebody else and make me look good.
exactly, like she's connected through her family, through like her grandpa and like work things. So like we kind of knew her. I kind of met her. But like her brother, who was her caretaker, like that's who she lived with, was her brother, had gotten sick. He was in the hospital, having all kinds of stuff. They weren't sure if he was going to make it. And she was like, you need to go and stay with her. And I was like, I don't want to stay with that girl. I don't want to stay with that girl. Mind you, growing up, I lived a lot of stuff. So my whole persona was like metal, System of a Down, dark kid, goth kid, very much that. And I had met her and she's like, I like Blue October and like, look at my preppiness. And I was like, you make me want to die. I can't. Like, I don't know. And
That's tough at that age.
stuff at that age. And like when we had met the first time, like she was just so preppy. And like I saw her again and she was like, I just took over your personality. This is just me now. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And she was like, yeah, I tried to be like preppy to fit in with the Jehovah's Witness thing, and like it just wasn't working for me. I was like, no, same. But I went and stayed with her, and it was supposed to be a encourage her to be a witness thing, except it was the exact opposite. And I was like, why are we doing this? And we were like best friends. We did our first tattoos together. She's currently a tattoo artist now. She did this one because she's cool. I don't know if you could see it. Probably
I
not.
can't tell what that is on the little screen.
That's a little ghost with a pumpkin in a coffin. But yeah,
Oh,
she
that's
was
cool.
fantastic. She was my girl. She still is. And like when I was hanging out with her, I felt like more alive and like a regular kid, like a teenager, and got to do stuff. And she actually genuinely cared, and the people around genuinely cared. Whereas, you know, I go through this traumatic thing and then people just disappear. Oh, I forgot to mention this. I forgot all about this. Okay. So, went through sexual abuse, right?
Mm-hmm.
My mom decided to make it about herself.
Oh.
And I was like, don't say this. Don't tell a soul. Like, do not say anything to anyone. So she immediately tells every single person that we know, right? Everyone. I had one friend, the friend that was in the same hall as him, and we were close. People knew that we were friends. And because she told everybody, all of the congregations were talking about it. They all came to the conclusion that I was bad association, if not now, then in the future, and that nobody should be allowed to hang out with me, including my friend that went to the hall with that same guy, his mom. To this day, we are still friends. To this day, his mom doesn't know that we're friends because she said that, like, we could never be friends because I was damaged goods, I was going to be bad association, all this shit. So, like, I was already just shit on by everyone.
Wow. I mean, first of all, again, it's the narcissist playbook to make everything about them. But secondarily, why are you damaged goods and a danger because someone else hurt you?
Exactly.
The lack of compassion there, the lack of base humanity to help a little girl who was hurt because of the failure of adults,
Mhm,
and then the adults compound that by failing that little girl yet again. It's just a disgusting situation, and I'm sorry that you ended up in that. I mean, here you are as a kid being sent in, hey, this kid or that kid has a trauma and is going through some stuff. I'm going to send you in as their helper, as their person to vent to, as their confidant. But yet when something bad happens to you, everyone scatters like roaches
Yeah.
and decides that they don't want to have anything to do with you. That's horrible.
Yeah, I feel like that maybe my parents were like, "Oh wow, trauma really messed that one up. You should probably save your kids. Here, send that one. Send her over there." I mean,
Wow.
after the abuse, I did get like a little bit of counseling for like 2 years, but my mom was very adamant that I was lying to them, and that I wasn't doing it correctly, and that basically I was just like manipulating them. She was the worst.
Wait, why did you get counseling if no one believed you?
My parents did. Well, my dad was maybe questionable. My mom did. My mom 100% believed me and like, oh shit, we should probably do something about this. But even like her ways in trying to help me cope with these things were still just evil, man. They were just messed up. She would write us birthday letters every year. Unless you pissed her off. If you pissed her off, you didn't get a birthday letter that year. But every letter was like, I'm so proud of you. You're doing so great, but you suck here, and you would be better if you did this. And we can really be proud of you if you do all this. But if you don't do that, we will be very disappointed. And I'm like, okay.
Oh,
The
the
counselor,
confusion of gaslighting, the mixed messages that just turn you inside out, and you have no idea which way is up anymore.
so much. The counseling, she was like, in her mind, it was supposed to make me more compliant with what she said. And like, I'm dealing with all these complex issues, like it's coming out in different ways. And she was like so convinced that I was just bullshitting this counselor and just making everything up and like coming up with a different thing and like, oh, like you're just being a bad kid because you're not doing the thing. And I was like, no, I'm just traumatized. I'm traumatized and things trigger me. I'm like having traumatic reactions to things that are happening. Like, I don't know what to tell you. My counselor had recommended putting me in like an after school kind of program. So even though I didn't go to school, I was still theater kid. So I got to do like drama and stuff. And I remember my mom getting really pissed off. She had dropped me off, and it was a group of maybe like 50 kids, right? Early 2000s, a bunch of emo kids. Me, who was like homeschooled and all my stuff comes from Walmart, still somehow fits in just fine. Got along with everybody, made friends immediately. And I remember the first day my mom picking me up and being actually mad that the kids were friends with me and that I was fitting in. And she was like, oh, she just fits in with everybody. She looks like everybody, getting along with them. And I was like, I'm sorry, you're the only one that actually hates me. I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah, that's kind of on you, Mom.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. What? Yeah, the mixed messages are really interesting to see. It's just like Jehovah's Witnesses and the gaslighting of the cult. We're Jehovah's special people, but also you're just a good for nothing slave of Jehovah, but you're a special slave. And it's like those two words that doesn't compute, and it's very confusing, and it leaves you wondering where you fit in and where your value really is. And it's really sad to see that your mom was just so awful in these ways to you. So you must have really had, this is interesting to see that then you do end up finding a way out. So how did life go in your later teenage years? So you're baptized at 15. You're going towards, 18, that's usually when people have decisions to make when their parents are Jehovah's Witnesses. Where am I going to go with this? But what was that path for you? You alluded at least to part of it earlier, but was that it? Was it you just get a job and then you decided you didn't want to do this thing anymore because of the abuse? Or
So, like I said, I wasn't like 100%, like, I knew the religion was bullshit, right? I didn't think it was real. After I had fully thrown myself in, like fully, and I mean, I studied constantly, I answered constantly, I was in service constantly, I was on studies constantly. I didn't feel good about studying with people either. Like, it felt weird to me, like I shouldn't be doing it. But I threw myself in because I was like, if this is the answer, this is the answer. And completely immersed, to the point where when I would get in trouble, my mom would say, well, then you can't go out in field service. And I'm like, you literally can't use that as a punishment. Like, that, you can't do that.
Mandate from God.
Yeah, I was like, if I tell the elders this, like, they're gonna get pissed off. Like, you can't stop me from going out in service. Like, that was my punishment. And then like once all of that hit, after my grandpa and I started being friends with my one cool friend, like, I started just taking a break from that and like stepping away from it. It all happened really quickly. Like, really quickly. Whereas like he died, people in my congregation were getting a little sketchy, and I was friends with like my now tattoo artist friend. Me and her went to SeaWorld and met some random boys, just random boys there. I think all the time, like, how did I not get murdered in my life? How am I still alive? So we met these random boys, gave them our numbers, and they were our buddies for the day, for our SeaWorld buddies, no big deal. Hung out with them, and then like one of them, I just kept texting them, and we were friends, and then we were dating, even though like we were talking on the phone. And he lived like almost at the border of Mexico. So like a 3-4 hours away from where I was living. And he rented a car and drove up one day, and I told to take me back to like stay the weekend or something with him at his parents' house. And I told my mom that I was going to stay with this girl who like had been having family trouble. She had been having family trouble. She was trying to pioneer. right? She needed encouragement. She needed somebody. And I think like something tragic had just recently happened. Like she had lost somebody. So I told my mom I was going to go stay with her. And she's like, of course do that. Why would you not? But my mom didn't get up. So it's not like she's going to get up to see who's picking me up or what's going on. So I just packed my stuff and I left and had a weekend there, realized that like I found more acceptance and love in the stranger's family than I've ever gotten in my own house, and I can't do this anymore. My only saving grace person is now gone, and I don't feel like I have anybody left. My sister's gone, my brother's gone, my grandpa's gone. Like, what do I do? So I was just really miserable. And he told me, like, if I've already talked to my parents, like, if you want to live here, like, you can live here. If you want your own room, we have an extra room. Like, if you want to, let me know. And I was like, I want to. And he not only got me a taxi that picked me up from my house, he sent me cash, and he got me a Greyhound bus ticket to take me there. And they picked me up at like 4 a.m. from the bus station and just took me in and treated me like their own. I packed all my bags. I left a little note on my bed and was like, I'm sorry, I didn't want to leave like my brother, but I can't do this anymore. I'm out. And I just got my stuff and I left and turned off my phone, took out my battery when you could still do that. Because I was like, I don't want any part of this. And I just left. And the only person that knew where I was, like, I didn't tell a soul. The only person that knew where I was my tattoo artist friend. And she stayed true. She did not give me up. She was like, I don't know where she is. I bet she's safe, though. She's probably fine.
How old were you?
17.
So you were 17 and basically you just ghosted your family.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand why.
I said my final goodbyes to them and they didn't know that because how could they? But I knew that. And I was just like, I love you. Hope you take care. And they're like, this is a weird good night. But yeah, I was fully prepared to just like never again. I don't care. And at this point, like my cousins, my aunts, my uncles had already just like not been in my life for so long, even when I was like fully immersed. I think after the abuse is really when people started cutting me out. So it was just like for my parents, and my brother was out. My sister was still in at this point, but kind of like half. So like I left, and apparently like my dad hired a private investigator. Somebody else had another friend find me, and a couple of people found me where I was. I mean, I was working, I was doing stuff. And my sister convinced me to go to her house. She was like, let me just pick you up, because it had been months at this point. And she's like, let me just pick you up. Let me just take you to my house, stay for a week. I'll take you back. And I was like, will you take me back? She was like, yes, I will take you back. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I was like, how long am I going to be here? And she's like a week. I was like, no problem. I packed up a little bit of stuff. I took a ton of my stuff. I was like, I'm never going to be in this room ever again. I'm taking what I can. I packed up some of my stuff because I was only going to be gone for a little bit. My sister picks me up. We get back to her house and I get a phone call. And I don't know if it was her. It was probably my mom, because it's always my mom who was always like, call the elders. So I get a call from the elders and they're like, if you go back, we're disfellowshipping you. And I was like, what are you talking about? All my stuff is there. Like, that's where I live. They're like, I don't care. If you go back, you're getting disfellowshipped. Like, you will lose everyone. And my sister was still in, but she was also like my mom. So I really didn't want to lose her. I didn't care about my parents, and everybody else was pretty much gone anyways. And I was like, okay, like, I guess I'm not going back. I'm like, while I was gone, my pioneer friend got disfellowshipped. 15 people in my hall got disfellowshipped. They were all doing like drugs and sleeping with each other, and all this stuff was going on. And everybody's like, I know you're doing it too. Like for years, my mom was like, are you on drugs? And I was like, I don't leave the house. What, do you have drugs? Where am I getting them from? I was like, I got them from the dog. So yeah, like I ended up getting stuck back at my sister's house. And I just was there and not knowing really what to do and how to go about things next. I hung out with my cool friend and we started partying, because I was like, I'm not like, the witness life is dead to me. Like, I'm not doing that again.
I have to ask, what happens to Guy and his family?
this poor guy. It had only been a few months. I feel so horrible. I'm a monster is what happened.
You're not a monster. You were gaslit and controlled. You
I
weren't a
was
monster.
definitely using him. I was using him as an escape. I wasn't like in love with this dude or
Well, of
anything.
course you were. That's what anybody would do in that
Yeah.
situation, psychologically.
Yeah, it feels messed up. But him and his family, like they came to me. He had a ring. He was like, "Marry me," and I was like, "No, thank you. That's okay." But also, like, I can't go back. Like, if I go back, everyone that I know is gone. Like,
See, again, the psychological, the gaslighting, using what is near and dear to you as ammunition against you is
yeah,
a hallmark of gaslighting, and they're weaponizing your family against you, and holding that over your head. I mean, of course, you would take any opportunity to get out of that.
yeah.
What a mess.
Once I got back to my mom immediately started shunning me immediately and like made it an exaggerated point. And I remember like one of the elders in our hall and she was like, "I'm shunning her and doing what I'm supposed to." He's like, "Why are you shunning her? Like, what are you doing? You should be encouraging your daughter to come back to the meetings, like not treating her like this. She's not disfellowshipped." And I was like, "Ooh, get her." But also I was like, I'm never going back. So I was living with my sister, with just the little bit of stuff I had left. And like I didn't have a way to get back to get anything anyways. And the first time I'm ever living in the city ever, have public transportation, able to do some stuff. I remember the very first time she like came in and she's like, "Get dressed, we're going to the meeting." And I was like, "No, no." And she's like, "What do you mean? No, you need to get dressed." And I was like, "I'm 18 now. I'm not doing that. Like, you cannot tell me what to do. I'm not doing it." And she was like really frustrated. She's like, "We're leaving." And I was like, "You're leaving. I'm not going." And she walked out of the room. And as soon as the door closed, I was just like, "Oh my God. Oh my God, that worked." I told her no, and it actually worked. I can just say I'm not going to do that and then just not do that. What?
What a
So
boundary. I was able to set a boundary, and
yeah,
someone, well, didn't respect it, but didn't throw me in the car and drag me.
exactly. It was a mind-blowing experience for me, and, yeah, living with my sister was the first time I got to feel not only like my own person, but like an adult. I mean, I was paying bills and working and doing stuff, like an actual job, not just like construction work. It was just a very different experience for me, and then, obviously, like everything that you think, you're constantly under pressure, and as soon as you get out you do whatever. Still don't regret those times. They were still very fun times for me, but I did go wild, lots
Well,
of
a lot of people
things.
do.
Yeah,
That's
and like
self-fulfilling prophecy, right? You're even taught that if you're gonna go out into the world is
yes,
wild. So a lot of XJW young people go out and then go harder than the people around them.
I thought that's how people just were. I thought that's just how
Yeah.
everything was. And I mean, like, I'm an artist in my bones. Like, I love art and just like movement and colors and paintings and things like that. So, like, I got out, I met friends. Friends were like, "Have you ever done hallucinogens?" And I'm like, "Let's do it." So beautiful paintings came from that. It was a very eye-opening experience. But the only person that I made friends with this one guy who hey, he used to be Amish and he like left the Amish community. And me and him, we would go pretty hard on everything because like we both kind of had this same understanding of just like, I've never even gotten to live as my own person before, and now I can just do whatever. I can just do it. Yeah. So we did all that, but like I never went back to Jehovah's Witnesses, even on the times where like had to move back home to my parents. Like I wasn't doing it. Wasn't doing it. For like a few years, I would still go to the memorial just to appease my mom. And then after that, I was like, I don't care about any of this. Like, I don't want any part of any of this.
You said you were doing
Um,
that to appease your mom. Was your dad pressuring you at all at that time too, or was it just your mom?
my dad, for pretty much my whole life, didn't have a single thought or thing to say that didn't revolve around what my mom wanted.
Ah,
So
okay.
he like the only bonding of my childhood that I remember with my dad was like driving in the car listening to music. That's it. That's all I've got. And yeah, that's it. Like my mom, same thing. I still struggle to think of like, do I have good memories? Is there some? And I'm like, maybe like a couple. But yeah, he didn't really have too much of his own opinions on things. It was just whatever appeased her, and like that's how he felt. So now he's actually living like his own person, which is also impressive. They were together since they were 16, so he also has never had an opportunity to just be his own person. But even growing up, like he didn't really go. Every once in a while he would go to meetings, or like for stints of my life he was at meetings. For stints of my life my mom would go, very rarely. And it was mainly just us all hitching rides.
So so you end up basically, then it sounds like, so you went to some memorials, but you just kind of faded away, so to speak.
Yeah, well, at 17, I feel like the fading started when my grandpa passed. Like that was my first official kind of fade situation, where it was just like a month and just nobody checked on me. Like nobody reached out. It was very apparent to me at that point that I could just fade, like easily, without anybody even noticing that I was gone. So there was that. Then with the hubbub of more than half of our young people getting disfellowshipped in our hall, and like me dipping out right at the same time, like just nobody thought about me again. My mom would tell me like, oh, do you remember this person? They ask about you all the time. And I'm like, well, they could tell me, they could reach out to me. I exist as a human. But nobody ever does. Even like when my mom passed, I think that's the only time anybody from any of my family, any of the witnesses that I've known, over 3 congregations in the same area that's like densely packed witness group for like my whole life. One person reached out to me who was not related to me in any way, reached out to me when my mom died, not even my own family. Like, to be fair, when they reach out to like my brother and sister, they're just like, you're gonna die in Armageddon, just wanted you to know. So
So it's
I'm
not fun
not
that they reach out
missing much.
anyways, but
Yeah, not missing much. But like even like my mom's sister, like I was saying earlier, I don't even know if we were recording, my mom's sister and her husband and my cousins that I was very close with, the ones that lived at the beach. I saw them maybe a month or two ago when my great uncle passed, and we were sitting at this table, this like long table, me and my brother, my sister-in-law, my husband, my daughter. They see us, we see them, they come over, they make their drinks, and like me and my brother we're sober, we don't do any of that, and like they're making their mixed drinks at the end of our table. Like they see us, we see you. Neither me or my brother are technically disfellowshipped. Like you could say hi, but like literally they've never met my daughter, they've never even seen my daughter. They just pretended like we did not exist, and like whoop, walked past. I'm like, you're gonna make your drinks on our table and not even acknowledge that we're here. Like, do I say something like, I'm sorry about your dad, that's why we're here? Or I was like, no, I don't even want to talk to them.
and so
But
you
yeah,
see shunning exists even when you fade a lot of times, not all
yeah,
the time,
so much.
but
Yeah, even then, like when I was 17, I remember my sister picking me up. She took us to this party at now these are witnesses that will still talk to me. Witnesses. They've always been the like, are
mm,
you but they've always been family to me, right? Like they're not technically, but they've always been like that to me. She took me to their house and I was like, I don't want to go. Like I feel uncomfortable. And she's like, they're gonna treat you fine. Like they're having a barbecue. And I can see my uncle walk up behind me, different uncle, walk up behind me, stop, look at me, stay there for a second, and then just shake his head and walk away. And I was like, okay, cool, cool, cool. And that was,
awesome. Yeah,
yeah,
that's how you treat people. It's funny, Jehovah's Witnesses could do such I don't want to give them the playbook, but they could do a better job of keeping people in if they were just humans and treated people
yes.
well, but instead they have to shun people and treat people like garbage. And so why would anybody want to go back to that? Of course, that also that vacuum created when they withdraw their affection is designed to draw you back to them, to
Yeah.
create that suction that it's like, oh, I've got to go get their love again. I've got to earn their love, which means it's not love to begin with.
It's not love. It's so
Control.
conditional and it's so fake. And the second that you ever actually need anything, nobody's there for you. Nobody's there for you. Like,
No.
they do not care. The second you're ever struggling. And then, like, the way the Jehovah's Witness organization works is so insidious. It's just so insidious, the way they connect everything. And, like, you need to work for witnesses. So if you mess up, you'll be not only unemployed, you'll lose all your family. Oh, you live in a witness house with a witness landlord. Now you're homeless. Like, it's just,
You're married to a witness.
it's so insidious. Like, all of it. It's just,
Yeah.
like, never have a human experience. Don't ever do it, or you're going to get disfellowshipped.
And
Yeah.
then when you're isolated, when you are shunned, you have no network, you don't know anybody, you've not been exposed to the real world outside, and so you feel completely and utterly lost,
Like a
like
little
you've been
baby
dropped
demon.
into a foreign country and no one speaks your language and you don't have any money, and yeah, it's
Yeah,
terrible.
you don't know anything. You don't even know how to have regular, normal human connections because people don't talk like witnesses. People don't interact like that. Like, it's all so foreign. And then if, you are in a situation where you wanted to come back, you can't build your own safety net of people outside of that because they're worldly and that's bad association. So, like, you don't have any leg to stand on for anything. There's no support. There's no love. There's no compassion. There's no humanity in that.
No.
There's no community.
So you walked away from it all, but just walking away from it all is a step. But I guess I would ask, was there anything that you did to deprogram, so to speak? Was there anything that you did to start breaking down the beliefs or anything like that?
Not for a very long time. So
May I ask why you didn't do it for a long time?
I think it didn't even register in my brain as something that needed to be addressed. I think
Yes, yes.
I grew up with so much trauma and so much isolation and so much just like, this is the whole world, that once I was able to live my life, I was so caught up in just living my life
You're just
and
trying to
just
survive.
experiencing things. Yeah, exactly. And like, I've worked on a whole lot of things and like worked on deprogramming a whole lot of different things. And actually, when I found your podcast, when I first started listening to, it's because I didn't realize, I was like, I've been out for, like 15 years, like, not a big deal. That doesn't even affect me. I'm interested to hear what other people's stories are though, but like, doesn't affect me. And then I realized, oh my God, I have so much religious trauma that has been affecting me for so long. And I didn't realize it. So I started deconstructing all of that. I had already kind of dove into spiritualism in a way, and then like kind of dove more into like witchcraft stuff and stuff like that. And like, just deconstructing all of that, deprogramming all of that, listening to different things, looking at different perspectives. For so long, I was just so angry at all religion in general that I just didn't want to do anything with it.
Totally
So
understand. It's very there is a lot that needs to be done. Do you feel well, I was gonna ask, one question that I often ask people is if there was anything you could or would want to say to people from your past, is there anything you would say?
I would say, I don't know. I just hope that you can get out. I just hope that you can see these things. I hope that you think critically about stuff. I hope that you see the things that don't make sense and understand that they don't make sense because there's a reason. Like, just look into it. Just use your brain. Don't just go with stuff. And so many people that I know are miserable and hate it, and they think that Jehovah is the answer. Try harder, pray harder, read better, read more. None of that is the answer. Like, this is the thing that's hurting you. This is the thing that's making your life harder.
Right. They attribute their misery to, oh, Satan's wicked system of things, right? But no, it's the stuff you're doing for Jehovah that has you miserable. That's why you're so unhappy.
Yeah, exactly. And Satan never lied. He wasn't the liar in the situation.
No, he
He
wasn't.
wasn't the killer in the situation. I'm pretty sure everyone who's read the Bible is really grasping a different concept of who's good and who's bad here, because like genocide, all that, like none of that's good. It's just not
But
good.
who's the one who's creating all the genocide in the Bible?
Exactly,
Right?
exactly. Like this isn't love. This isn't love at all. Like this makes no sense. Nobody is like, oh, what a loving God. He killed all the firstborn sons. Such a sweetie, that one.
Well, that's the way to handle things. So today in your life, so you've been out now for how many years?
Like 15 years.
15 years. So what do you enjoy about post JW life? What's good in your world? What are you into?
I mean, just life in general, just being able to live my life and be my own person and not get judged for absolutely every single thing about me, is just beautiful. Having genuine human connections, genuine friends, people that actually care, people that are there when you're in a pinch, when you need somebody, that aren't just like kicking you to the side and to the curb because you weren't in a certain place on a certain day. You know, a lot of really good things, a lot of activism, trying to do my part in helping this world as a whole be a better place. I think a big part of being a Jehovah's Witness for me was that I genuinely wanted to help people. And like, I genuinely, for so long, thought we were doing good and wanted to do my part in helping. And now that's what I'm doing. And, you know, trying to do what I can to make a difference in any situation I can, build community locally and, you know, get stuff accomplished. Like with right now, with what's going on with the genocide in Palestine. And it's not just Palestine, it's the Congo, it's Sudan. Like being a Jehovah's Witness, all the political stuff is always suppressed and you don't pay any attention to it. For me, at least, I didn't notice political things until way later because it was just so far from my mind. But we're in a situation right now where, you know, we're on 30 days of an active genocide going on. Every 10 minutes, a child is dying. And, you know, think about how many minutes we've been recording this podcast.
A lot of
People are
kids.
being bombed every single day. And it's a situation that like right now we can make a difference. And I'm seeing the stuff that's going on, making a difference. Calling your representatives. There's an app called 5Calls. You can download it. You just put in your information and it brings up all of your representatives. It'll say what subject you want. You just say, you know, Palestine or Gaza or whatever, and call them and say, if you're not okay with what's going on, our tax dollars are funding it. If you're not okay with what's going on, just say, you know, ceasefire in the occupation. Let your representatives know. Use your voice. Share the stories of these people. These people are putting out stories of their last words, their last messages to the earth, and they just are sharing in hopes that somebody sees them. And I feel like it's really important not to look away from a genocide. It's really important to hear these stories because it might be the last time these people are ever allowed to speak their truth. Turning away is how it happens. And there's so much going on that we can actually do something to stop it. So by the time this video comes out, if there hasn't already been a ceasefire, if you're not okay with this, if you want to make a difference, even if it's just one person using your voice, it's an extra person standing with the world against this, call your representatives, email. Even if there's been a ceasefire, email to end the occupation. These people need liberation. So that has been a really big thing that I've been very focused on. And just hearing these stories and hearing these people and trying to bear witness to the atrocities that are being committed and not turning away and making sure that someone bears witness to the truth that's happening. So if
Sure,
anybody,
it's beautiful now that we can have the freedom to get involved as we see fit. You know, our whole lives were spent aiming for the genocide of the entire world.
yeah, and
And
hoping for it though, and
yes,
hoping for it. Now that we're out of that,
yeah,
we should be able to see that like this is not okay. we should be standing up for like humanity everywhere, no matter what, no matter beliefs, color, race, religion, whatever it is. Humans are humans, and we should stand for them because that's all we have left.
Humans shouldn't be fodder for um, political wars and or ideological wars or religious wars as we were hoping for. Human lives matter, and every
And 2
person that's
million
killed is
people 2 million people are being I said 2 million people are facing, collective punishment right now without food, without water, without anything, being bombing hospitals, schools, mosques, churches, residential places, refugee camps. Like over 10,000 civilians have currently been killed. More than 5,000 have been children. Like half of the population is under the age of 18. Like this is such a serious right now humanitarian crisis that needs to be addressed. And like if anybody can use their voice to say something to rise up against it, please, I encourage you to do so.
sure. Well, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, it's definitely these conflicts are complex and complicated, but at the simplest terms, they're all just humans. And
Yeah.
maybe there are reasons that people act out at times and such. And there are a lot of things going on in this world that are really, really, really ugly. There's also a lot of really beautiful things too. And there are people being liberated from religious organizations and oppressions and different things. So, humanity has this yin and yang, these beautiful things and these awful things as well. And it's really sad.
The amount of people that I've seen come together over this is just beautiful. It's beautiful. The amount of hope I have in humanity, seeing like the protests and people speaking up about these things, like it's so moving. Even yesterday there was like a huge protest, hundreds of thousands of people are showing up to like make their voices heard against this, and it gives me a little bit more faith in humanity. It makes me think that like not only are my problems so not that big, right, in the grand scheme of everything, it makes me more appreciative for my life, for everything. Every time I see my daughter, just to like hold her and know that she's okay, and how lucky I am to be able to do that when so many people are not. It's hard to find a lot of joy right now in little things, but at the same time, I'm finding unbelievable thankfulness that I can turn on my sink and I have water. I have electricity, I have food in my stomach. I just think that for so long I was, raised not to use my voice, or that I wasn't powerful and my voice didn't have any power to it. But right now it does. Right now, when it's not just one person, it's the world, it means something. And I just want more people that, especially that have gotten out of like this religious cult, to understand that you have power. Your voice has power. You can do something. You are so capable of so much, and you are worthy of so much. And just don't let growing up in this fundamental garbage, let you think that you're anything less than, because you can do it. You can do it. You're amazing. You have power.
And that's where we're going to end this, because I think that's the message. I appreciate you sharing your story, and I'm glad that you have been able to realize how amazing you are and to have your own voice and power. Yeah, it's a process. Healing is a process, not an event, as I tell people all the time. It's not you just wake up, leave the cult, and everything is magically awesome. There's a lot of work to do, but I'm glad that you're doing it, and others should be able to get that chance as well. So we're all awesome in our own ways, and we should all be appreciated for that, including you.
Thank you. You too. I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Like, I can't even tell you how much just watching your podcast, and I don't remember the name of the original one, or my exjw life, that one?
Is that what it is? JW life.
That one. I watched so many of those. Like, just watching those like helped me so much. I didn't even realize I had the religious trauma left to process. I was like, oh, the religion, yeah, I don't believe in that, no biggie. Like, I didn't even know that it was still there, and it was there in so many aspects of my life, just like squeezing me. So I appreciate the work that you do too.
Thank you very much. The podcast is still out there for anybody interested. It's still on podcast platforms. I got taken down off of YouTube. This JW Life did. I'm pretty sure it was Watchtower. But it'll be back up soon enough under a different name. And
they're like, don't tell people what we do.
yeah, pretty much. So no worries. We can all use our voice in different ways, and you're using it right now for a lot of different things. So I appreciate that. And yeah, thank you for being you.
Thank you. No problem. I really appreciate the opportunity.